The Philippines and the United States have successfully test-fired a Tomahawk missile from a Typhoon launcher. Watch. Just after midnight, or in the first 10 minutes of Tuesday, May 5th, flying from Leyte near central Tacloban City, as much over the sea as possible before reaching Fort Magsaysay, 630 kilometers north. It's the very first use of the Typhoon since the Philippines requested the system in 2024. And in another first for Balikatan, Japan launched 2 Type 88 missiles in Ilocos Norte as part of a maritime strike mission to sink a decommissioned Philippine vessel, watched on by Philippine and Japan defense secretaries. The two men disclosed that Manila and Tokyo are working on the transfer of the Japanese Abukuma-class destroyer to the Philippines, probably the first arms transfer since Japan relaxed its arms export ban.
We also agreed to move forward with discussions aimed at realizing comprehensive equipment cooperation with a view to the early transfer of Abukuma-class destroyers and TC-90 aircraft, as well as other defense equipment. Against the backdrop of an increasingly tense regional environment, we concurred that both sides will hold consultations when necessary to ensure the security of both countries and the peace and stability of the region. In particular, as unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force or coercion continue to be observed in the surrounding waters of our two countries.
China responded characteristically like this.
日本曾对包括菲律宾在内的东南亚国家进行侵略和殖民统治，负有严重历史罪责。在东京审判开庭80周年这一特殊年份，曾经的侵略者不仅未能深刻反省历史罪行，反而打着所谓安全合作的幌子，向海外派遣军事力量，发射进攻性导弹。这一动向在此说明，日本的右翼势力正在推动日本加速再军事化进程。
Once again, why is China so concerned? And how is all this connected to Japan's blistering regional tour over the past week from Vietnam to Australia, Indonesia to the Philippines? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Kavat. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by Cai Rongxiang, National Zhongzheng University Political Science Professor, and Gemont Lalari, Jewish Policy Center Senior Non-Resident Fellow. A very warm welcome back, Professor Cai and Gemont.
Thank you. Thank you.
But first, the Tomahawk travels at Mach 0.75 or around 880 kilometers per hour, allowing sustained flight over 1,500 kilometer or even 1,800 kilometer range while maintaining a low altitude flight profile that reduces detection by radar systems. In the May 5th test in the Philippines from its central Philippine launch site, the missile maneuvered to reach the country's eastern coastline northward and then through the coastal area of Aurora province before crossing inland to Fort Magsaysay. We do need to point out that the munition was inert. That means that there were no live rounds and no high explosives were involved in the test. This is the Philippine Marines spokesperson.
Mag-hit talaga ng target to us small as a window. Kahit bintana ay yung target from afar, kaya niyang palusutin yung Tomahawk.
G-Man, so like hitting a window but 600 kilometers away, what can we say about the precision there?
Well, I think that it's a good analogy. I'm not sure it's accurate, but it's good enough. Yes, it's very good at finding a target far away. And as the video mentioned, the Tomahawk uses its internal system to look at the ground, and as it's moving, it doesn't emit anything like a radar. It does digital scene matching area correlation, and so basically it's seeing its path. And then when it gets to the location, it looks for the picture of what it's supposed to hit, and it goes for it. And at the terminal part, it's flying at a very low rate, but then it can maneuver and turn, and then get to the target. And so it's very difficult to hit. So it's got low altitude stealth, it's got surgical strike, it's got all these things, and it's been in use for quite a while.
Yeah, and so we showed that it was from the central Philippines hitting a target in the north. If it had started from the north, how far would it have got?
Okay, so if it was in northern Luzon, it could reach anywhere in Taiwan. It could hit cities like Fuzhou or Quanzhou in China from there. The test range was only 600 kilometers. It can actually range much farther, up to 1,600 kilometers, and it could reach Hong Kong, Hainan, Shanghai, etc. It also can put at risk any Navy assets from the PLA that might try to transit the Bashi Channel.
Okay, so Professor Tsai, what message does that send? A Tomahawk fired from a Typhoon on Philippine soil operated by a Philippine U.S. team?
I think it's a real game changer because it breaks the logic of China's carrier killer strategy. And also, it's a mobile thing, right? So that it can move, it can shoot and scout. This is very important, and it's very hard to check because you use that kind of truck to move that kind of missile systems. So this is very important. It forced China to spend billions of defense against a threat. So the kind of system, especially this kind of advanced missile system, can strike anywhere, anytime, fundamentally shift the regional balance of power. So the thing is that a lot of Chinese military bases are in the crosshairs of this kind of missile system. So it's an offensive system, of course, but they're going to use that as a defensive purposes.
Yeah,
but
it's deterrence.
Yeah, it's for deterrence, credible deterrence.
So what does it say, Guillemot, in your view?
It says that the Philippines and the United States are serious about defending the Philippines, and it's part of the treaty between the Philippines and the United States to defend the Philippines from aggression. And also, it reinforces within the Philippines that the U.S. is helping the Philippines with its defense, and it's serious. And I think this is a good message to the people of the Philippines and also to Taiwan, because it shows that the United States is active in the area.
Professor Tsai, why wait the 2 years? I mean, originally the system arrived in 2024 at the request of the Philippines. You know, why now, 2 years later?
Because the whole situation is different. The environment is different. So they are not waiting for the technology. They are waiting for the necessity, because this is very important, especially China is pushing harder and harder to the Philippines. So this is the time to fight back, literally, right? So this is very important because as we know, the summit is coming soon. So it's kind of like
Xi Jinping and Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump, right? So it's time to show Xi Jinping, the first island chain is a fortress, and this is very important, especially for trade dealer like Trump. He likes to negotiate with the position of strength, not weakness.
Okay.
So Tomahawk missiles are very, very important, especially for this negotiation timing.
All right, Guillemot.
I think, in addition to what Professor said, I think that also this has been a buildup for the last 2 years in terms of practicing between the U.S. Army and the Philippine Army, practicing moving logistics, support, and training the Filipinos on how to use the system. And so it's also a visible deterrence. It's something that you can see, touch, as opposed to cyber and space are a little more ephemeral. And also, the bigger context, of course, is it's not just the U.S. and the Philippines, it's also the Japanese. So you see this whole integration of north and south of Taiwan, which is fantastic.
So we're ready and we're unified.
Correct.
To deter China.
And 2027, the theoretical date of when the PLA is supposed to be ready to invade Taiwan, it puts a a little damper on their enthusiasm.
Okay. Now, after months of discussions, Japan and Philippines are moving forward with the transfer of 6 used Japanese Abukuma-class destroyers to the Philippines. With the missiles removed, the 2,200-ton vessel is designed for coastal defense and anti-submarine warfare. It maintains a 76-millimeter main gun, close-in weapon system, Harpoon anti-ship missiles, and anti-submarine rockets, as well as lightweight torpedoes. And in Indonesia, Koizumi stopped before the Philippines. Indonesian Ambassador Heri Ahmadi confirmed to the Japan Times that Jakarta considers buying Japan's 3,900-ton Mogami destroyer as a priority. Now, 11 of these are already being sold to Australia. Takaichi Sanai visited Australia last week and called the country a quasi-ally. Okay, Professor Tai, let me ask you. So the Abukuma destroyer, it's a used one for the Philippines. How important will it be for maritime security?
Yeah, it's very important because those ships provide the Philippines, I think, with something they have been lacking, because it's a reliable multi-mission platform for surface warfare and anti-submarine detection against China's gray zone activities. So, because China have been using Coast Guard vessels and maritime militia to go after the Philippines patrol vessels. So these destroyers give Manila a more muscular presence that cannot be easily bullied by Chinese Coast Guard big vessels.
So, Gemon, it's being reported that this is the first transfer since Japan relaxed its ban on the arms exports. What does it signify about the security alignment of the Philippines and Japan?
First, I'd like to point out that Japan is designated by the U.S. government as a major non-NATO ally, which means that all of the weapon systems it uses are NATO compliant, both what it has from the U.S. and what it builds. Therefore, the Abukami is a NATO compliant weapon system. The Philippines is also a major non-NATO ally, according to the U.S. government. And so that means its weapon systems are all NATO compliant. So therefore, as Japan starts giving or selling weapons to these countries in the Indo-Pacific region, then that means that the countries themselves will also be NATO compliant, which means in the future, if they choose to work with the countries that are pushing back on an aggressor like China, they will be able to function as a unified totality.
A little bit like that kill web that we spoke about.
Correct.
Yeah. Professor Tsai, I just want to drill down a little bit about this idea of the convergence of their security interests. I mean, is it acknowledgement that the Philippines is strategic depth for Japan, that in a sense, the Philippines' security is also Japanese security, or is that going too far?
Yeah, it's like a defensive line between Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines. This is so important because we know the total of parts is bigger. The sum of the parts is bigger than the whole. So this is super important, especially it's a team effort. It's not only Taiwan. You got involved, Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines. So the first island chain is back, and I think it is very important for the United States. And also, it's kind of a burden sharing because United States is busy. It's busy on the full plate. So it's kind of like, okay, maybe Japan can share some burden, right? Offer some weapons to the Philippines.
Indonesia sits next to critical maritime choke points, the Straits of Malacca, Sunda and Lombok, between the Indian and Pacific Oceans, which handle around 29% of global oil flows, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. The Strait of Malacca is the world's largest oil choke point, bordered by Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia and Singapore, providing the shortest sea route from the Middle East to East Asia. Now, Sunda Strait, between Indonesia's Java and Sumatra, acts as an alternate route to the Malacca Strait, and Lombok Strait, located farther east, is a deeper passage used by larger ships like supertankers that cannot navigate the shallower Malacca Strait. This is the readout of the defense deal between the US and Indonesia in April this year for training, exercises, and military modernization. But the Sunday Guardian reported on a classified US document that stated the arrangement is for, quote, the government of Indonesia to authorize blanket overflight for US aircraft, clearance through Indonesian airspace for contingency operations, crisis response purposes, and mutually agreed exercise-related activities. Indonesia says it's still under discussion. And this week, Japan also struck a defense deal with Indonesia. So, Gemont, let me ask you. So let's go back to the potential purchase of the Mogami destroyers by Indonesia. Bear in mind the geography. Why will they be so important?
Well, just like the Philippines, Indonesia has thousands of islands. And in order to maintain its sovereignty, it has to have lots of Navy and Coast Guard ships to monitor its waters, both from the EEZ point of view and also from the security point of view. And its waters are also used as a major transit point for a lot of economic trade. And so in order to ensure that that trade is flowing unimpeded, this destroyer is important.
Okay, and Professor Tsai, what has Iran taught us about these choke points, and therefore how important that makes Indonesia?
Yeah, it's very important because right now the Strait of Hormuz is closed, right? So the Strait of Malacca is getting so important because this is kind of like another choke point, especially for Southeast Asian countries. And this is why Jakarta, they try to get more capability, especially they have to, protect the security, especially for the Strait of Malacca. So in terms of against China, because China has some issue patrolling, the North Natuna Sea, especially for the Indonesia.
The South China Sea.
Yeah, for Indonesia. So it's a big problem for Indonesia as well. So they try to build up their capabilities. I think this is very important, especially they try to have some relationship between Japan and Indonesia.
Okay, so Gemont, any coincidence that there was the US agreement and there's possibly this overflight agreement and the Japanese one so close together?
Yes.
And also during the Iran war?
It's all connected.
Right.
I mean, it's all messaging, right? And so there's a kinetic part, there's a diplomatic part, there are economic parts to this, but basically the veto on the maritime choke points that Indonesia sits on top of not only the Malacca Straits, but the Sunda and Lombok Straits. Nearly 2/3 of China's maritime trade goes through those things. So it's important for China too. It's not just important for the Southeast Asian countries. Yeah. And so I would say that that by Indonesia declaring that basically a neutral player in this and that it will keep everything open, it's a really useful thing for the United States and Japan and other countries to know that they can move through these areas without getting caught up, as we've seen in the Straits of Hormuz.
Do you sense that they are hedging or are they actively defending against China?
I think they're doing both. And considering that the president of Indonesia used to fight communists in the 60s, I think that he probably has some hesitation about getting too close to China.
Right. Last month, China used the Iran war to try to coerce Taiwan. Listen.
和平统一后，两岸将实现互联互通、应通尽通，完全可以弥补台湾在电力、天然气、原油等方面的短缺，为台湾的能源资源安全提供可靠保障。
The trips this week and last week by Japan to Vietnam, Australia, Indonesia and the Philippines weren't just about security and defense. Japan is consistently the most trusted major power among ASEAN countries. In this year's State of Southeast Asia survey, Japan leads on 65.6%, while followed by the EU on 55.9%, the US on 44%, China on 39%, India on 38%. In Vietnam, Takaichi Sanai expanded Abe's free and open Indo-Pacific concept on its 10th anniversary by linking together maritime security with economic security. Professor Tai, let me ask you, so we know that the alliance model, the US alliance model, has traditionally been about defense and security. What do you make of Japan now redefining it?
Yeah, because you try to have multiple middle powers, right? And each country can contribute different capabilities. For example, Australia offers nuclear submarines in the future, right? And they can share intelligence. And for the Philippines, they provide bases and the intermediate range missiles like Tomahawks, right? Indonesia, they can secure the checkpoint in Malacca Strait. So the overall deterrence can be strengthened without U.S. So it's very good for the United States. Okay, you guys pull your own weight and you get together.
So that's a good explanation, Gemon, of why these four were chosen. They sit at this kind of intersection, isn't it, between choke points, sea lanes, maritime security, supply chain. Let's go back a bit to the economic security side. What was that component of these trips? And again, how powerful is that? We started off this section with the coercion of Taiwan. How important is that in the face of this blatant economic coercion by China?
For example, Vietnam represents to Japan a vital hub for supply chain diversification. Vietnam is Japan's second largest supplier of rare earths after China. Takaichi pledged $10 billion through the Power Asia Initiative to secure energy resources, including oil, and for Vietnam's Ninh Song refinery. Also, regarding Australia, also is a quasi-ally providing resource security for Japan. The focus was placed on critical minerals like lithium and rare earths, liquefied gas, essential for Japan's high-tech and energy sectors. But it's not just one way. It's also the other way. Australia gets from Japan a guaranteed high-paying market for its resources and a sophisticated security partner that shares similar concerns. The Philippines is also an important economic factor. The focus was on energy transition and LNG infrastructure to ensure energy resilience. And so what do the Philippines get? They get modernization of its Coast Guard and military via Japan's official security assistance and no strings attached alternative to China's infrastructure loans that often carry high political costs. So each country gets benefits and in the economic and in the military dimension.
Professor Tai, you spoke about Japan's role. How powerful is it that it appears to be emerging as a regional architect? I mean, my question is, has China awoken the sleeping giant?
I think so. Yeah, because it's kind of, they try to test their own medicine because China is very assertive, right? Especially they try to push back. They try to say Japan is developing militarism, something like that. But in terms of economic stuff, China cannot control rare earths forever. Much less they use trade as a weapon to oppress Japan, because Japan is a powerful country, militarily and economically, right? So Japan, it's like maybe if we don't want to step up, and we are gonna be very, very vulnerable. So this is a very, very critical moment for Japan to step up and play a more positive role and share a lot of burden. And I think it's different. The security environment is different. So because of China's assertiveness.
We talked about Japan stepping up. Professor spoke about the arrangement where this can be all done without the US. What does this mean for the US-Japan alliance? Is Japan, possibly becoming a leader in Asia? Does that step on US toes?
Not at all. Not at all. It's the same in Europe. The United States, specifically President Trump in his first term, asked the Europeans to step up their defense. And eventually they got all to 2% in the NATO countries. And now they're going to 5%. And Japan, I would just like to point out that it was China that pushed Japan to respond. Remember in 2022, after Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, that all the missiles were fired into, some of them landed into Japan's EEZ, and they woke the Japanese dragon or tiger, I don't know what you want to say it is, and they caused this problem. Mm-hmm. And so it's a response to Chinese aggression. And furthermore, Japan is now acting like a mini hub. In the past, we've talked about the United States being the hub, and the countries like Japan, Australia, Philippines are the spokes. But now Japan is a hub and spoke, a mini one, a regional one, and it's taking an excellent position. And its recent change in law of allowing itself to sell weapons to other countries, 17 countries are currently approved by the government. This gives Japan a much more important role, and finally, it's getting out of its cocoon.
Right, okay. And finally, Professor Tsai, so China's not only reacting to missiles, is it? What is the bigger picture that it's reacting to?
I think China is going to ruffle its feathers because they're going to be angry about this, the whole thing, right? But they have no idea because of them to cause that kind of problem. Japan just try to respond to that kind of situation.
Okay.